And once again, I'm going to say it. If Final Fantasy 16 is a hit, Yoshi-P is a made man. He literally won't be able to drive the wheelbarrows of money that Square Enix is going to throw at him, because he'll be able to do whatever he wants to. Welcome, everyone, once again to the 14th floor. This is the Final Fantasy XIV themed / focused podcast that is being run by myself, your co-host, City Mike, along with my partner in crime, Erston. Erston, say hello. And today we have some pretty cool stuff to talk about. We have the media tour embargo was just recently lifted on Final Fantasy XIV 2 days ago, and we got a deluge, if you will, of content and information talking about the new jobs, the job changes, we got to see the dungeon, the first dungeon, level 81, and we got to see some of the new zones, and so we're going to talk a little bit briefly about that. In addition to, as kind of part of that, I want to spew my own horn a little bit about how much of an absolute legend Yoshi-P is, and some of the feedback that I've been seeing in various communities that I've been kind of keeping an eye on. As far as how the media tour has been perceived by some people outside of Final Fantasy or a tertiary. And then we're going to go into what we here at Lorecraft are here for, and that is to talk about lore junk. We're going to talk a little bit about the Echo. We're going to talk a little bit about the final days. And we're going to talk a little bit about our hypotheses for Endwalker and its ending and what that will mean for us going forward. And if we're able to get around to it, because we are also our peers, role players, as it were, inside the realm of Final Fantasy, we also want to give people a little bit of information for maybe how they want to get started. But we have other things that we're going to focus on before then. So we're going to go ahead and start getting into what we want to talk about here as far as the media tour. But before we get to that, Erston, how you doing?
Doing all right. Finally got some sleep, so I'm awake.
All right. And as they say, sleep is for the week after con, and we just recently had our convention of sorts of the media tour. People who are much bigger content creators and community influencers than us, we nascent fledglings to this land of content creation, had the ability to sit down and play the game and take a look at some stuff and do some stuff. Mr. Happy practically vomited like 17 videos that I'm guessing that he was just working on the entire time while the embargo was up. And so my thoughts to begin, I dig it. I kind of like, as far as like the job changes, I like how they are essentially turning Monk into Geki Juken Beastarts. For those that are unfamiliar with Japanese Power Rangers, that's Jukenger? Dang, now I can't remember the name. But anyways, and what was the other thing that I was really... Well, I mean, of course, fucking Summoner. Summoner is... It's insane, and I still am intending on doing a playthrough with a brand new Arcanist to see what changes they make to the story, because you gotta make changes. You gotta make changes to that story. There's, let's see, well, there was Summoner, there's Monk changes, Sage still looks really cool. I'm not, yeah, Reaper. I'm not a tank, so like not as a profession, but I hear that Dark Knights are kind of feeling the scholar burn. Like they're not feeling particularly shined down upon. You do Dark Knight a little bit more than me, Erston. How you feel about that?
Yeah, that was my first reaction too. Seeing it's my my inner edginess felt a little more edgy after that. It was a little saddening.
Did you have to stand in the shower to wash your black eyeliner off?
Yeah, because really, Dark Knight really gets one ability at level 90, and that's really it. We get this weird trait at I think it was 84, where your pull, your ranged attack, reduces the cooldown on your plunge, but that's kind of a weird. That's a really weird trait to have. It's just kind of strange. And then most of the tanks got potency buffs, which is also just kind of
Okay. I mean, I like how, and just for a moment on game design wise, I like how they're embracing press a button to turn into another button. Like with the new Confettier combo, you press the Confettier button once, you get the one sword. You press the Confettier button again, you get the other ones, and then you press it again and you get the big one.
Yeah, embracing the PvP combo style.
Yeah, and I think that's game design wise, that's something that maybe it needed to wait until the late PS4, PS5 era for them to be able to implement it smoothly on PvE content, which is more robust than PvP is. But I'm glad that they're doing it, because it means that they can add more buttons without adding more buttons. And it would be, because I mean they kind of experimented with it with Red Mage, because when you do your finisher, your level 80 finisher, Jolt turns into
Scorch.
Scorch, yeah. So I'm glad that they're kind of embracing that a little bit more, because it means that they're gonna be able to increase combos without necessarily putting more buttons on the screen, because especially since you still have to optimize for a freaking controller, there's only so many buttons.
Right, yeah. And even with the keyboard, there's going to be only so many buttons that are reasonably easily accessible.
Yeah.
So I do think it's a good thing, and like you said, it'll help. I think it'll help be able to consolidate just having so many buttons for something you're going to press anyway. I guess could be argued that it dumbs the game down, but then you still have things like positionals pretty much that helps keep the complexity, and it allows them to replace those 3 extra buttons that they were using for combos for something else that could be more mechanically or skill intensive. So I think it's an overall good thing in this case.
Well, and I think that with them going in this direction, where now that we've seen the first stat squish, the first stat squish is coming, we're gonna see a button squish. We're gonna see them get rid of. I mean, they already kind of did it once before when we went from Heavensward to Stormblood, where they just got rid of a whole bunch of shit, and they turned other shit into traits and stuff like that. And that kind of seems to be kind of the philosophy. If we can turn it, if it's something you have to maintain, we'll turn it into a trait, and if it's something you have to press, we'll either fold it into another button or have a button turn into it. But I mean, pretty soon here, we're gonna see a button squish. We're gonna see him get rid of a whole lot of actions just because, there's only so, you can have 10 hotbars, but each of those hotbars are only going to have like 10 items on them. And, so game design wise and what appears to be like longevity wise, I think that's a good idea. I think that's a good direction that they're going to go. So I'm looking forward to that, kind of, because they can always fuck it up. But folding into that, oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say, and I feel like it also, as a sort of side thing, I feel like it actually makes it a slightly more action gamey, or like action RPG-ish, where something like Tales or even Devil May Cry, where you push 3 buttons, you get a combo. That's existed in other games, and it's still flashy and looks good, and doesn't cause bad game design. It opens up the ability, the possibility of new moves and new combos and things that you could do. So,
yeah,
I think it's gonna be really good.
Well, and then on top of that, like there always is the comment from people outside of Final Fantasy, who want to create reasons to not enjoy the game, rather than just saying, I don't like it, of, how simple Final Fantasy looks in comparison to other MMOs, like especially, the frickin' you have to be a virtuoso on the keyboard, WoW, in order to be able to effectively get all your stuff done. And like, I think a good analogy that I'm often hear from people who have come over to accept the game, or to at least give it a fair shot and go, okay, this is kind of how the mechanics work, is especially endgame stuff, it's like playing Guitar Hero while you're playing DDR. Because you have to manage movement and your button squishes, your button presses at the same time, and sometimes you have to do 2 different sets of button squishes while you're dodging 2 different sets of mechanics, that operate in different ways or that overlap onto each other. And something that I've always appreciated about, like, even though I'm not a raider, but something that I've always appreciated about raid design from where I've seen it in Final Fantasy, is that when you actually put all of the elements together and you look at it from the outside, just as someone who's just watching stuff go on, it's like, I don't want to say a dance because that's cliche, but it's like
how I've always described it.
I mean, it's choreograph. It's choreography. It's everyone moving and doing what they're supposed to do, like that the little thing that they do at the beginning of the Job Actions trailer, where you see all the tiles moving around. Which God, give me a board game that lets me use those job tiles. Like, give me chess and I can use the job tiles as pieces. That would look so good. But have it be like on a mahogany board, or like just a hardwood, like deep veneer board.
You heard of this, Square Enix business creative unit.
Just put it in my veins. They'd be like job stone or job icon chess, $399, and I'd be like, I hope that they're encrusted in diamonds, and I hope that the board is made of like living redwood. They chopped down an entire goddamn tree that was 3 centuries old to make this fucking board game.
You're half right, but also it comes with an emote.
Yeah.
Or a special movement code.
Yeah, it comes with the emote and a minion. And the minion is the tree.
The tree that they cut down to make
the tree that they cut down. That would be exactly the shit that they do too. And people would just fucking buy it because they want the minion and the emote. They don't give a fuck about the game.
Yeah.
Oh, that's good. But yeah, like, like, Final Fantasy looks simple if you're just looking at how many buttons people are pressing, but you have to look at the whole thing. It's a symphony. It's a production. If you're just watching a good group of raiders do their thing. Like, I wish... Ooh, here's another idea. Listen to this, Business Creative Unit 3, or Creative Business Unit 3, whatever they're called. Give us a spectator mode. Like, let it, like when people are doing fights, give them the option of turning on a free camera that can then be accessed, you know, and then either like they can record things coming from different angles, or, you know, people, you know, like if a streamer's running it or something, they can turn on spectator mode and let other people watch the fucking fight. I think that would be cool.
That would be interesting.
I would spend time.
I think they'd have to invest a lot extra in server ingest if that was the case, because they'd effectively be running their own Twitch servers at that point.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying that it'd be easy, and I'm not saying that they'll ever manage to do it. But look, if for whatever reason some sort of miracle happens and there's no further like chip shortage, you know, or anything like that, and they're able to get all the servers they want, I guarantee you they have the money. Guarantee you they have the money. Oh man, can you imagine later, like, as long as things keep going the way that they are, and Yoshi-P has a WoW-sized budget, you imagine what that motherfucker's gonna do? Where he gets to look at the coffers and he gets to go, I have how much money to make this game now? And they're like, it's a blank check, man. Like, is there enough money in the world? And he'd be like, all right, okay, here's what we're doing. We're I don't know, man, we're going to another galaxy or some shit. He's just sitting there, oh yeah, let's go.
Speaking of Yoshi-P. How much of a beast is he?
Jesus. 32 individual interviews that were each about an hour long.
Yep.
So literally a day and a half of one-on-ones. And this man did not lose a step on any of them. And double shout out to Aimi, the translator, Chan.
Yes.
Because she technically had the hardest job out of everybody. Because she was the person talking for him and maintaining that energy. And I hope she deserves a vacation. Like, I hope she got it. I hope she was able to sit there and go, okay, after doing all this, I'm taking like 2 weeks off. And they're like, hey, you do you. you literally got through like literally talking for 3 or 4 people.
32 hours.
In the course of 32 hours.
What? I think it was over 2 days, right? I think that's how long the media tour was.
Yeah, I mean, because of course they had to sleep in there somewhere.
Yeah.
But I mean, still, like, you get up first thing in the morning, bam, 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 interview, break for lunch, bam, 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 interview, break for dinner, bam, 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 go home, wake up the next day, do it again.
Do it again. Yeah.
So, yeah, that's... And part of what I wanted to talk about with Yoshi-P, and I don't know if you're necessarily following all the same things that I am, media-wise, but...
Yes.
Especially after Asmon and Rich's interview with him. Man, this guy, Yoshi-P, like, we always loved him because we've been playing and we've been his devout disciples for, 8 to 10 years. And we always knew what we were getting when it came to this, and now it looks like people on the outside are finally really getting to understand how much of a goddamn titan Yoshi-P is in terms of game design, of MMO design, of ethics, of of how one treats their community and communicates with their community. And, I used to say it before anyone was able to listen to me. Final Fantasy is not going to win based on player count or technical stats or any hard numbers. Final Fantasy wins because of ethics and the community, because the team of Final Fantasy XIV treats the players better, hands down, than any other company treats any of its consumers. And I work for a pretty good company that treats its consumers pretty well. And Creative Business Team 3 blows everyone out of the water because of clear, direct, understanding communication. Even when Final Fantasy players are mad at the devs, even when we're upset about something, we get over it. That shit don't linger.
It lingers a little bit, but most of it dies down a lot, for sure.
Well, and especially, we all have the understanding that they'll fix the things they can, and they'll do what they can about the things they can't. Regardless of what anybody wants or says, the Final Fantasy XIV engine was literally crafted from shoestrings. It was cobbled together at the last goddamn minute, because Crystal Tools was garbage. And it's been running through 3 console generations and however many iterations of PC technical hardware and Macintosh technical hardware for the past decade. There are computers that can't do that. There are business programs that can't do that. And so there's some things that they can't do stuff about. There's some things that they can, but no matter what, we always reach an understanding. We always reach an accord with the devs, because they don't keep their mouths shut. They don't sit there and say, "Oh, you don't need to know." Don't worry about it. We got it. They're like, look, we're 6 guys in a basement today. We're 6 guys in a basement in a very poorly ventilated basement right now. Just kind of pounding away. And it's like, we know that you want your 2 dungeons per patch, but we just can't do it right now.
We can't swing it right now.
We can't swing it right now. We'll make it up to you in other ways, but we're down to 1 dungeon to patch now, buds. We wanna improve quality of life and give you a dungeon. It's either we improve a lot of quality of life, or we improve nothing and give you 2 dungeons. Which would you rather have? And we're like, okay, fine.
Remember, that was a complaint for a long time too, is just the decreasing amount of content. And what they really meant was dungeons, because it's like, oh yeah, dungeons went down. There was technically 1 less ultimate than we were supposed to get, but then we had a lot of quality life upgrades during these times of less content. Essentially, we had the introduction of world visiting. We've got. Okay, now of course my brain just totally shits the bed and goes blank.
Well, we got world visiting, we got continued ARR revamp, we got continued expansions to New Game Plus. They put flying and ARR zones on their off time. They put glasses on Hrothgar on their off time, which is dumb because they should have been there in the first place. But it'd be nice also if you could go to a goddamn hairstylist and change your hair on Hrothgar, because what the actual fuck?
Yeah, I'm not sure why they decided that.
You have to Fantasia to change your hair as a Hrothgar, and I don't know if it's because they were like, oh well, some of the hair has horns, and so that doesn't make sense. The Aura males some of their hairstyles have horns in them, and you can still get your hair cut. So, ow. But we got a lot of stuff. We get a lot of stuff.
Yeah, and like I said, I think seeing the level of communication and the what's the word? I don't want to say honesty or casual
Transparency.
I don't even know if transparency is the right word, but the very, I guess, level, not like I'm better than you, or I'm the dev and you're the player. It was a very even conversation between Yoshi and everyone else. He wasn't speaking like, oh, I'm the dev and this is why it's happening because I know better. It was, let's talk about this. And I think that, especially like looking through all the interview comments, 8 people like that don't play WoW, like Stoops, it was like, people commenting like I was, I might not play FF14, but I really respect this guy and what he and his team do and how they present themselves. And that speaks volumes, I think.
Yeah, and I really hope that other developers are out there and they're seeing the news, they're seeing the reactions coming from outside the Final Fantasy community. Because look, we're fucking marks, okay? we people who are already playing and have been playing and have been loving and enjoying Final Fantasy for this entire time, we are fucking marks. So unless they literally set the game on fire, we're here. we're fucking playing it.
We are
so
thoroughly tempered.
We are tempered as fuck. Yoshi-P has breathed his god flames upon us, and we dance to his tune. But outside of the Final Fantasy community, people are actually really noticing, Yoshi-P's philosophy and the development team's philosophy. And once again, I'm gonna say it: if Final Fantasy 16 is a hit, Yoshi-P is a made man. He literally won't be able to drive the wheelbarrows of money that Square Enix is going to throw at him, because he'll be able to do whatever he wants to. He'll be able to. I just want to make a game where someone takes a shit in a toilet, and they're going to be like, okay, here you go. Here's $8 million and a 24-person development team. Make it the best shit game you can.
Yeah.
He will be on Kojima levels of made man. Like before Konami got tired of his shit, and he got tired of Konami's shit. That was a mutual thing between Kojima and Konami. But before then, Kojima could do no wrong because he made them so much money.
Oh yeah.
And so, man, I hope Final Fantasy 16 fucking slaps. I hope it blows everything out of the water. I hope I stop playing Final Fantasy 14 because I'm playing Final Fantasy 16. Yoshi wants us to go out and play other games, right? Like he said it. He said, like, hey, you don't have to stay married to Final Fantasy 14. Motherfucker, I'm going to Final Fantasy 16 then.
Easy.
So, but yeah, so, what else have you taken from how people have reacted to the interviews with Yoshi-P? Because, I mean, he did 32 fucking hours. Plus.
Yeah, that's crazy. And, that's a lot I see in the comments. Oh, he's a boss. He did 32 of these, and he looks tired, but that's because, he did so many interviews, and like I said, he talks about how they respect his philosophy, respects his demeanor, how he approaches things, how he talks to people. And I definitely agree with a lot of people that I felt like the interview that Asmund and Rich had was actually one of the best because it didn't talk about 14. It was more general, and I swear to God, it seemed like that's what he actually really wanted, because a lot of the interviews I saw was, we could talk about Final Fantasy 14, but we don't have to. We can also talk about other things, or even things you want to discuss privately. And like, I feel like they kind of emphasized that, and everybody was like, "Nope, talking about 14."
And don't
And
talk
so-
about 14 because that's what we're here for.
Yeah. So I feel like for him, it was like a good moment to like relax and actually chill and take a breath from all of that, from hearing that interview. And it was really good to see something, outside of the FF14 box.
Well, yeah, and also like you could tell that his comment at the end where he's like, "Man, I just want to sit with you guys and have drinks and talk shop," like that. You could tell that was a genuine thank you.
Genuine, he meant it. Yeah.
Yeah, that was a genuine thanks, guys, for giving me one of these interviews where it wasn't about the state of the game, it wasn't about what's in the game or what's not in the game. It was about games, and it was about MMOs and design and design philosophy and communication philosophy. And I kind of feel bad because, well, I don't feel bad. I wish in a slightly different world where Yoshi-P was a little bit more aggressive and a little bit more petty, for him to just fucking dunk on World of Warcraft. For him to
like
just...
Everyone was feeling that.
He deserves it. He deserves to be able to dunk on World of Warcraft because he took a game that was shittier than Warcraft is now, according to what everyone tells me, according to what everything that I hear, because I don't play World of Warcraft, so I wouldn't know directly. But he took a game that was shittier than World of Warcraft is now, that at a time when World of Warcraft was the most popular thing out there, he cribbed notes from World of Warcraft, and then he fucking turned it around, and he saved Square Enix. Because they were drowning in the buckets of money that they were losing because 13 was bad. You don't need to make 3 versions of a game because it's good.
Yeah, there was 13. There was the movie, which also didn't do very well.
The
which
movie,
they were still recovering from, even after 5 or 6 years
Spirits,
after it came out.
Spirits Within hurt.
Yeah.
Spirits Within hurt. It hurt me. I went to go watch it. I went to go watch it in theaters. It hurt.
I mean, it wasn't a bad movie. It just wasn't a Final Fantasy movie.
It wasn't a bad movie, but it was a bad Final Fantasy movie.
Yeah.
Like, you were expecting to hear things, hear names, see people. None of it. Whoever, I think James Woods played Sid. But yeah, no, it's, oh god, it was
the thing. And it's funny because you see this on Twitter, like these articles that's like, it has like side-by-side articles. It's, Final Fantasy 14 possibly irreparably damages Square Enix's reputation. And next to it you see Final Fantasy 14 now most profitable Final Fantasy ever. The most
profitable Final Fantasy in the series. In the franchise, that's it. In the franchise, Final Fantasy 14 has made more money than any other game, including Final Fantasy 11, which they're still making money on. So, I mean, but he saved the company, and so I just, maybe when he retires, which he probably won't because he'll probably die, in the office, because he seems like he's gonna die either in his office or at his desk at home, trying to do whatever the new ultimate is on his Black Mage. That's gonna be how Yoshi-P meets his end. But maybe if he was to retire or something, I would just love him to pen alright, now that I don't have to be nice anymore, fuck it, all of y'all, fuck you, World of Warcraft, fuck you, Blizzard, fuck you, Activision, I'm better than you, I was better than you for a decade. In a different universe, in another shard, maybe there's a different Yoshi-P out there that is basking in the glory and the recognition that he so duly deserves. All right, so I think that's enough talking about current stuff. Talking about the media embargo and the things that we learned and how much we love Yoshi-P. We're going to get into the meat and potatoes of what we do here at Lorecraft, and we're going to talk about some lore stuff. So, fair warning to anyone who is listening to this who is playing Final Fantasy XIV now, or who is planning on playing Final Fantasy XIV and could potentially be getting into the game and wants to be into a lore position, of understanding the story. We are probably going to spoil something. So the spoiler section begins here. When Erston uploads it, we'll have him put one of them cute little breaks in right at this point. So right there.
Spoilers in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
So, let's talk about the Echo. The Echo is a very important thing in the lore and storytelling of Final Fantasy XIV. It is basically described as the ability to see and hear beyond the bounds of the soul. You are able to touch the ephemeral connection that all beings share. And in the case of the Warrior of Light that we play, it means that you can conveniently see very important and powerful scenes from another person's past.
Yeah.
Things that allow you to gain a little bit of extra insight into your current situation. Never anything out of context. Never anything that you will have to wait a long time to get the understanding of. Usually you will beat up a guy, and then you will immediately gain understanding as to why he's a bad guy.
Yeah.
So, the question is what determines who gets the Echo? We don't have any direct... Well, no, the direct language that we do have is that Hydaelyn does it?
I think so, yeah.
Like, the Blessing of Light is a different thing from the Echo.
Yes.
But
I think
both things come from Hydaelyn.
that's my understanding, yeah. Because I think only 2 people have been blessed with light, right? Ysael and the Warrior of Light.
No. There have been lots of people that have been blessed with light.
In the current.
Well, I mean, in the current, I believe it's just Ysael and Warrior of Light, because no one else gets crystals. I think they're the only ones that do. And Ysael even only got one.
And I guess Ardbert too, in the Warriors of Darkness, because I seem to recall they had crystals as well.
Oh yeah. But I mean, we're talking about on the source.
True.
I mean, you could theoretically say that there's hundreds. I mean, if you look at everybody that we fought at 5.3 when we fought Elidibus,
yeah.
You could reason that all of those people have blessings of light, or at least most of them did. But
including Hildebrand.
I mean, maybe. Like, why not? Like, he survives things that he shouldn't.
Yep.
Well, see, the question then that you have to ask, just breaking off on the Hildebrand thing really quick, is the Hildebrand that shows up on that random chance in Heroes Gauntlet is kind of Zombie Brand, because he's in his wrecked clothing.
True.
So, since summoning heroes across the rift is affected by both space and time, are we seeing old Zombie Brand? Like before he wakes up,
Unearth him.
before you unearth him after he fell from Dalamud, Or is that wherever Hildebrand ended up after getting yeeted by Yojimbo? Or I mean not Yojimbo. Oh god, that was so disappointing. Gilgamesh.
Greg.
But since the Blessing of Light is a different thing from the Echo, but I believe they say that it's because, see if I can try to remember. Elidibus says that the Echo is essentially the background, the residual background radiation of Heidelin's call. Because after you hear Heidelin's call, you have the Echo. So you have to already be susceptible to Heidelin, be susceptible to Heidelin's call in order to get the Echo. So it may not even be that she's like directly responsible for it. It may just be an effect of that cosmic background radiation. Which is why every time there's a star shower, you get a bunch of people to get the Echo.
I wonder if that ties further into that theory you had that you mentioned before about
the moon.
Eorzea, yeah.
I mean,
because of the source of the stars would presumably not be the planet. The star, I guess you could say. And likewise, I would assume that people have to have some amount of ability to channel aether. Because, as far as I'm aware, no Garlean has it, which is why they went into the research of resonance.
Yeah. I mean, you'd have to have a susceptibility to aether, with considering that aether is the construct of all things. It's the force. It is the power that both attracts and repels. It binds, it separates, it organizes, but it also disperses. It's the force, essentially.
Yeah. It is.
So, yeah, it would make sense that, and then that's why they get into the resonant, in order to force the Echo. But we know that the only Garlean who's got it is Xenos. He's apparently the only one it worked on.
Yeah.
Because no other, the only other person that we know of that it worked on was Fordola, and she's not Garlean. And we see no other Garleans, and I would figure that because like him or hate him, Xenos is a powerful badass. He has a considerable amount of power. And if he was the first Garlean to be able to successfully get resonated, then it would stand to reason that they would go, holy shit, we need to give all of our guys this.
Yeah.
So there's more likely
couldn't.
Yeah, and then more likely than not, everybody else it either didn't take or it killed them. Which leads to another one of my theories about Xenos. That Xenos is the 13th shade of Azum.
Yeah, remember we were talking about that actually. Yeah, and what about him being so strong is part of that, like that he's that lost 13th that might have gotten rescued or something.
Mm-hmm. Because he has clear memories of the final days, which means that he's got a clear connection to the ancients. Not an echo, not a distant memory, not the feeling of that I've lost, that something great has been lost. He actually has full-on memories of Amarod.
He said he's always had this dream.
Yeah.
So it didn't suddenly happen when he gained the resonance.
Yeah. So Um, I think that's something that will end up, it's getting a little ahead, but something that we'll end up finding out in Endwalker is that he's the last shade, the last shard of a Zem. We've got 7 now, and he's the 8th. But yeah. So what theories have you got from your own head about the Echo there that you want to talk about?
So I know, and actually something you'd mentioned was that the possibility that the people who had the Echo are the sundered souls of maybe the original Amarantines, which to me would make sense because they were the masters of creation magic and would be able to see into things like people's souls, such as like Hadathales, who was able to see that you two were together, you and Ardbert. So I do buy into that theory for sure. But as far as like who gets it, yeah, I was like, it is literally a shower thought. Like, how do we, who gets the Echo? Like, the Garleans don't seem to have it. Everybody else, potentially seems to have it. Like Kryl, Minfilia had it, so it's not bound by race. We don't know if people outside of Amarat had the equivalent of an Echo, because we really don't know anything about the ancient world outside of Amarat, and that Azem traveled the world to meet the other people.
Yeah, because it was his job to learn. It was Azem's job to learn of creation, and so instead of staying in Amarat and hearing about it from other people, Azem went out and wandered to truly learn about the creation that the Amaratines had considered themselves stewards of. He put himself in charge of that. So then that will go ahead and bridge a little bit into the next bit. So the final days. So you've heard what I've had to theorize about the final days. So I actually want to hear what you got. What do you believe was the cause of the final days, or what the final days, the original final days, because we're going to get into another one, of the original final days that befell the Amorats. What's your take on it? What's your theory?
So, and kind of tying them together, I feel like Shadowbringers really kind of pushes the idea that the final days happened because it was formed from the doubts of people who couldn't agree on how to deal with the situation. I feel that's kind of what Shadowbringers was pushing the belief of. But I'm wondering if the final days was actually caused by the battle between Hydaelyn and the Zodiark. It happened. They were trying to fight this, whatever caused this, was going to cause this calamity. They couldn't agree. So they created Zodiark, and then what remained of the people, the half, the side that sided with creating Hydaelyn made Hydaelyn, and then they battled it out. And what you see with Amarat, or and as well as up in space when you're doing that last section of Amarat, is the result of the destruction between the two fighting it out, and the chaos that people are running away and creating beasts out of is their fear of what's going to happen. So in my mind, it makes me wonder if the final days was caused by that, because it seems like they're talking about the final days in Endwalker, and I think it's very unlikely that we will see a rejoining, the rest of the world's rejoining. So we're not going to get like full Hydaelyn, full Zodiark battling it out or something, but it seems like something happens that presumably opens portals that allows a bunch of void sent to come through. So that's why I'm thinking the final days was not actually this whole people being scared, disbelief thing. It's the battle itself that caused it.
There's a line in the Amarat dungeon. There's a couple of lines in the Amarat dungeon, but the one that immediately jumps to my mind is Emmett Selk says that the beasts of the final days, like you said, were drawn from the doubts and the fears of the Amaratines, but that they needed that the only way to fix that was to summon the will of the star. So I don't think that the final days themselves, as seen in Amarat, are the results of the battle between Hydaelyn and Zodiark. I think that because the way that Emmett Selk and the other Amaratines that you're able to talk to in Amarat, the Shades, including Hythlodaeus or Hythlodius or whatever, however you pronounce it, they described that it was a growing sense of unease and of little things happening here and there, little bursts of chaos, spurts of destruction and stuff like that they were trying to manage before it got to Amarat, but they were too late. By the time they had gotten the convocation of 14, now the convocation of 13, because Azam didn't show up. By the time they got the convocation of 13 together to actually make a decision on what was going to go on, boom, fire in the sky. And after they finally managed to put Therion down, which is the big organ-faced monster at the end of the dungeon, when they finally managed to do something about Therion, they said, holy crap, it's only going to get worse. That thing was the worst thing that we've ever encountered, that we've ever had to deal with in our entire lives, and it's only going to get worse. We need to do something now, and the answer was Zodiark. And here's where I'm thinking how things played out. They deal with Therion, they go, things are only going to get worse, we need Zodiark. The convocation of 13 goes, okay, we're going to do Zodiark. But the other high-ranking Amaratines go, but wait, you don't have Azem here. Azem isn't here to voice,
their vote.
Because the Amaratines were all about being essentially led by that governing convocation. And I imagine that the Amaratines that weren't in the convocation were very much like, wait, we need to hear from Azem before we commit to this. And then the other half were like, nah, 13's enough. We've heard from enough of our leaders. Yeah, majority rules. We've heard from enough of our leaders. So you had people that really respected Azem's opinion and Azem's viewpoint on things because he'd actually been out there in the world experiencing it. While the other half that sided with the convocation, they're like, we're not going to survive. We can't wait. So the convocation goes ahead and goes, okay, we're doing Zodiark. Everyone who's with us, throw it up for Zodiark. Throw up your hands and give your life an Aether for Zodiark. Don't worry, we got you. We'll bring you back. So they summon Zodiark. Zodiark shows up, fixes everything. It's the will of mankind and the star made manifest. He's got the unlimited ether of however many immortal souls sacrificed themselves to create him. So it's, he literally pushes the reset button and grants the wish. And so now you have the convocation, and then everyone who said, nah, we're not giving up our lives for Zodiark. We're not giving up our lives for this plan because Azem's not here. You didn't listen. We didn't have the full convocation. So Azem comes back, and they're like, okay, Azem's here. Azem, this is what happened. These idiots over here sacrificed half of our race to create this god, and and what are we gonna do? And Azem's like, well, let's let him finish fixing shit first, and they're like, okay. So Zodiark finishes fixing the planet, and then, but while Zodiark is fixing shit, the other Amaranteans are gathering in secret, and going, look, we can't, this, all of those guys that were our leaders, they're now tempered. We can see the ether, we can see their souls, we can see the color of their souls, and they're all colored Zodiark now. So what's in it? What's there for us when he's done? Like right now he's got a task.
Yeah.
What happens to us when he's done? What happens to those of us who did not stand with the convocation? They're gonna need ether to bring back the 50% of us that raised themselves up. And so you get essentially the convocation of the 12. And both the 13 and the 12, they're looking at Azem, and they're going, so it would really help us, whichever side is talking to him, if you kind of made up your mind. Are you with us, or are you against us? And Azem's like, neither, because all of y'all are dumb. And but he goes to Venat and the 12, Memphina, Halone, the people who essentially become the 12. He goes to them and he goes, okay, look, all of y'all got it wrong, but out of the two choices that I have, I'm not gonna stop you, but I'm not gonna help you.
You're the lesser of the two evils.
You're the lesser of the two evils in my eyes.
And maybe they would be the convocation of 11 because.
Well, yeah, it'd be the convocation of 11 minus Venat.
I was gonna say minus Azem.
Or minus Azem, yeah. So so you have the 13 and you have the 11, and so the 11, the opposite, the Heidelin faction, they look to their people and they go, look, in order for us to be able to combat this god, we're gonna have to make one of our own. And we're gonna need half of you to do it. We have to at least put as many souls into our god as they did into theirs. And then they look at everyone and they go, but we got you, okay? When Heidelin wins, we'll bring everybody back. And Azem is just sitting there like, you dumb sons of bitches. I'm out.
Yep.
I'm gonna go somewhere else while you guys doom our entire race to be the thralls of one of these two gods. So Venat becomes the heart of Heidelin. They summon Heidelin. Heidelin is equal in power because they gave up just as many souls, and they duked it out.
A quarter of as many.
Or I mean,
half
yeah.
as many, because it's only half as many people left now.
Yeah.
But yeah.
But because maybe their belief was a little bit more fervent. At this time, Zodiark had kind of done his job, and so maybe the prayers to him, yeah, his prayers weren't as fervent, and the belief in him wasn't as fervent because he had done what he was supposed to do. So they duke it out, and Venat maybe as the center of Hydaelyn, because here's another thing that I think a lot of people miss, and it's something that I realized because I watched over Rich do Seed of Sacrifice, and Elidibus specifically says that he removed himself from the heart of Zodiac, or from the heart of Zodiac.
Yeah.
He pulled himself out of that in order to be the emissary and to perform his duty of making sure that the source didn't fall to imbalance. I don't think Venat did the same thing. At least not at first. I think only just now, when we see her at the end of 5-5, that's where she pulls herself from the heart of Hydaelyn. Or she pulled herself from the heart of Hydaelyn when Hydaelyn grabbed Minfilia.
Yeah, I can see that.
Because at that point, Minfilia had become the heart of Hydaelyn.
And that would explain why, how with half as many souls, she was able to overpower Zodiark, who is potentially missing his heart.
Yeah.
And I guess we've kind of seen that with the whole Warrior of Light fighting Ascians, because they're unsundered full-on souls, but yet a half-souled person still able to defeat them. So it's kind of got that parallel to it.
Well, I mean, I got a theory on that, and I think I told you part of it. And I'll just go into the brief of it. At the very beginning, when you start and you make a new character, and Hydaelyn is talking to you, there is a very obvious and prominent big yellow dot that kind of floats down and pops right in front of you. I think that's a Zem. And like I described to you previously, I think Azem is riding the Warrior of Light the same way that Minfilia rode the Minfilias in the first. And that the Warrior of Light's ability to battle, like to fight, the Blessing of Light protects him from
tempering.
From tempering, because he's essentially tempered. He's tempered by Hydaelyn. So because she's a greater force, nothing gets through that. But the Blessing of Light doesn't give one power. It pretty much just, protects them from Ascians and Primals. It protects their soul. It doesn't necessarily give them the power to do shit. And what I'm thinking is that the Warrior of Light's power to defeat Primals, to defeat literally the most powerful entity the two most powerful entities really that we have ever run into throughout the game have been Thornton and Alexander. I mean, both of them. Alexander by himself blows Bahamut out of the water, and Shinryu. And Thornton comes in a close second, because he literally had the power of all three Warring Triad, the power of the prayers of 1,000 years worth of faith to Thornton and the Knights of the Round, 2 eyes of Nidhogg, and a sword that had been sucking up ether for centuries. And we one-shotted his ass. because extreme mode isn't canon, we one-shotted that fucker.
Yep.
And same thing for Alexander. Alexander literally had control of time, and Alexander was smart enough and aware enough to know that it was a threat to reality, so it canceled itself. Alexander canceled himself.
Yeah.
So the Blessing of Light doesn't give us the ability to beat those guys. We got to have something else, and I think it's a Zem. I think that in those times, fighting those great enemies, a Zem pops out and kind of cheats, because he's Emmet Selk levels of power. But because he doesn't want to be the star of the show, he wants to see.
But sundered though, right? Because
No, Emmet Selk was unsundered.
Well, Emmett was, but Azem was sundered.
Well, I mean, but even, well, I'm thinking that while Azem was sundered, he, like I said, he pulled him in Philia. He kept enough of himself to be able to smack into somebody, and because he doesn't ride all the time, he's able to come out and go, and use bursts of incredible power to allow us to overcome foes.
Because he's not constantly in control. His power is just a sudden huge burst that is at unsundered levels because it's not in constant use. It's just stocking up. And then
you could even say, you could even say Limit Break. Limit Break is a Zem.
Yeah.
Because there's almost no time in any big fight where you haven't had to use Limit Break. And that's a Zem, snapping his fingers. And that's why at Seat of Sacrifice, when we, hold the Jewel of a Zem gets us out of the void, of the rift between worlds where the Asians hide. But then Azem, that little piece of Emmet Selk that was left, Azem goes, "Hey buddy, tag me in," and that's when Emmet Selk shows up and does the snap that actually releases us from the prison that Elidibus put us in. But yeah, that's my thing on Azem. Is that I think that Azem has been riding us, kind of in the back seat, just chilling, and just going, something's got to be done about this. Here you go. Here's some unsundered Asian power for a brief moment to make sure that you pull through this. And I think that's why part of that is why when you could also trace it to Thornton just picking up that we were multiple sundered souls put together, but I think Thornton got it. Because Thornton, after you beat Thornton and he looks at you and he goes, "What are you?" I think Thornton got it, because Thornton had been looking at Asians, for years by that point.
Mm-hmm. And even when he ascended, he's seen what an Asian's soul looks like.
Yeah, and so he looks at us and he goes, "What the fuck?" You're not, and because on top of that, that this is actually something that feeds into that a little bit more. If prayer and faith powers the thing that it's based on as much as the thing that it is, there are people who worship as them.
Mm-hmm.
There are lots of people who worship as them.
And there are lots of people, I would imagine at this point, who are starting to, in a way, worship the Warrior of Light.
Yeah, and so the Warrior of Light's getting his own worship. Azem has been getting worship. And so Azem, kind of, riding on our shoulders, kind of reaches back and grabs some of that and throws it, during times when we need that oomph. So, yeah.
I think that actually ties well into that next segment that I've written out, which is what will happen at the end of Endwalker. And for me, this came about when I was thinking about it more as a leading into the next storyline. Because presumably at the end, something will be resolved with Hydaelyn and Zodiark, whether it's they're both destroyed, there's some sort of balance found, but something needs to happen, I think, to bring the Warrior of Light back down to respectable power levels in order to be able to continue adventuring without just being so godlike powerful. Because I feel like if this were like D&D, he or she would be entering demigod level. And really,
yeah,
like, mortal characters like the Scions would have trouble keeping up and helping out.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, so since I went on a fucking tirade on the last one, let's hear first what you think goes on at the end of Endwalker.
So, as I kind of mentioned before, it's unlikely that the other worlds would be rejoined. So I feel like it's going to need some kind of like Samus Aran kind of power reset where you kind of get brought back down. And actually, now that you'd mentioned it, maybe it will be the removal of the Blessing of Light. And maybe you will still have the aspects of Azem with you then. That's actually a good point. Something I didn't really think about. Something that actually, when you had mentioned about Shinryu and everything, actually made me think about with Xenos and Zodiark versus you and Heidelin, as about will Xenos end up taking over Zodiark by having a stronger will, and yourself do the same with Heidelin, resulting in a battle where you kind of combine with him but are the stronger of the two wills? That seems like it was kind of hinted at the end of Stormblood. Certainly, you're both strong-willed characters.
Yeah, I'm thinking in that vein that what we end up getting is, thanks to Elidibus getting ate up by the Crystal Tower, Zodiark doesn't have a will anymore. Zodiark's just kind of there.
It's just chaos.
So Fandaniel comes to Xenos, and Fandaniel, because he's been interacting with everyone anyway, he goes, so he knows what Xenos wants. So he comes to Xenos and he goes, hey, so I know you've really got a hard-on for the Warrior of Light, huh, buddy? Okay, well, check this out. That other god, the one that isn't Heidelin? That guy doesn't have a brain right now. And I've seen what you've done to primals with no brain. So, you wanna go ride a god for a while?
wanna go pilot a god mech?
Yeah, wanna go pilot a goddom? Wanna go jump into the Ava, Shinji?
Yep.
And Xenos goes, fuck yeah, bro. Let's do it. Let's fucking go. And
just a mega battle.
Yeah. And so now what we'll probably end up seeing is, when we get to the moon, by then probably Xenos will have awakened / jumped into Zodiark. And so now we gotta go to the moon and get Venat to unass Heidelin. Because since she's still there, she's still Heidelin's will, she's still Heidelin's heart. And so we're gonna go to the moon and we're gonna be like, hey, Venat.
But yeah. Because we just talked about how maybe Minfilia is the heart now.
Well, now that with Minfilia gone, I'm thinking that Venat just kind of, Venat isn't going to, because especially if Venat knows what Xenos can do, you think she's going to leave a Gundam unpiloted? Like, it might be out of his bailiwick to go jump into the light god, but he rides gods. So having an empty god, not a good idea. So we go up to the moon, and we're like, hey, can we jump into Heidelin? We got to go do some Gurren Lagann throwing galaxy shurikens with Xenos for a while.
Yeah.
It's the spiral versus the anti-spiral, man. Like, literally, like, it's the spiral versus the anti-spiral.
Nice. For real. And how do you how do you suspect it'll be resolved? Because with some destruction or something like that of Hyden, or defeat of the both or something, do you think it will end up in the worlds rejoining, or will they still be separated?
I think the worlds are going to stay separate, and not necessarily for any major story reason, but because you have 8 expansions worth of content. If you keep the world separate, you have 8 worlds to go to, potentially. So I think just from a narrative, you know, where are we going to go, what are we going to do, I don't think it would be a good idea. Now, what they might do is, instead of rejoining, bringing everyone onto the same plane. So that way we can visit other worlds without necessarily having to, you know, do the thing with the Crystal Tower and with the Exarch.
That was actually something that came to mind when you just said that, was whether we figured out how to rejoin the worlds without causing calamities. And that would, like you said, be where the extra content would be going to these worlds to bring them back in.
Yeah, and I mean, but I think it's going to be a little bit more, I want to say, dynamic than that. I think what's going to happen is we do the Highland Zodiac fight. It's going to be us versus Xenos, fighting in space, throwing galaxies like shurikens, just fucking Gurren-Lagann, just 100% madness. In the end, the decision has to be made, because this is a major thing in Final Fantasy, and so I can see where this is building to. Final Fantasy has always been about ending the old and making way for the new. And the time of the Amaruteens, the time of the Ancients, the time of Hydaelyn and Zodiac is over. So neither Hydaelyn or Zodiac are gonna survive.
Yeah,
I think they're both gonna be put away. But the energies, the power of the two, because this did just remind me of something else. Crystal Exarch, Graha, when he gets rid of Elidibus, he says something very important. He says that the Crystal Tower was designed to contain the boundless energies, the limitless energies of the boundless sun.
Mm-hmm.
We have 2 Crystal Towers.
That's true. There's the future one and the current one.
We have the future one and the current. We have the one that's sitting in the first, and we have the one that's sitting in the source. And I think we'll find a way, just out of pure fucking MacGuffin magic, to bring the first, to at least allow a door to open to the first Crystal Tower, and one god is going to go in one of them, and another god's going to go in the other one. And both of those together are going to be the energy that powers everything that we do from here on out. It's going to be a fucking golden age, you know, of
opening a Stargate or whatever.
Yeah, you know, it's going to be opening the Stargate. It's going to be activating the perpetual energy device. You know, they've really done a good job of Chekhov's gunning, of turning the Crystal Tower into Chekhov's gun. You know, because they, you know, at first it was just a throwaway thing, and then they said, fuck this shit, we're putting it in the game. Legit. We're gonna make it a thing. And it's a thing now. Like, it's eating gods. You know, it's eating little gods. It's eating medium-sized gods. So now we're gonna see whether or not it can eat big gods. And so I think that's a very real possibility. I think it's kind of on the outside. Pulling in the second Crystal Tower, like I said, it's gonna take some MacGuffin magic. But that doesn't mean that they can't do it. And I think ultimately what it's going to be is that the blessing of light isn't ended, it's dispersed. And for so long, our character has been the main character of the story. But there's a new philosophy now. Yoshi-P and the others, especially on the story and the dev team, they've embraced that single player experience in order to tell the story and to get people through the game. Post Endwalker, I think that they're officially going to make everyone Warriors of Light. There's not going to be a Warrior of Light. Every PC or every player character is a Warrior of Light and is in the world. They can use 18 million different ways to explain it. They can say, oh, the worlds are rejoined, so now there's a lot more people. All of the planets are on the same plane, because we know that there are other planets in our solar system around Hydaelyn, but we don't know who the hell they are.
And we know, Midgard Stormer came from the stars.
And we know that Midgard Stormer came from space.
Yeah, and Omega.
Yeah. So we know that there's space out there.
In some form showing up in the next expansion.
Oh yeah, I think that's going to be something that ties in.
Proto-Omega, as people have dubbed it.
Yeah. I don't think it's Proto-Omega. I think it's Omega 2.
I think it's Omega 2.
I think it's Omega Mark 2. And I think that little tidbit there, that little, hey, that thing has an Omega face. I think that thing's going to play an important fucking role, because there are only two entities that know how to travel space. One of them is dead, essentially, because and I think it's kind of funny that after you're done dealing with Omega, Midgard Summer's like, man, I'm done. I'm going back to sleep. Y'all motherfuckers got this. But after you're done dealing with Omega and Midgard Summer goes away, you don't have Midgard Summer. So the only other person that who knows how to fly in space is Omega. And the Alligans, because the Alligans made the Ragnaroks. And they put a goddamn moon up there. So I think Omega's Omega Mark II is going to play a very important part. I would not be surprised if that Omega Mark II is a final dungeon boss or one part of the big final fight of 6.0. If he ends up being kind of like the Magimaster of the final tower, or something like that. But like I said, I think what they're gonna do is we all become Warriors of Light, and now there is actual canon. There will actually be canon, explanation for why there are so many powerful adventurers. And while that's going to bring the general power level of the world up, it's going to bring the Warrior of Light down.
Individual powerful down.
Yeah, it's going to bring the individual power down. And so, then we get New World, the New World, where the Mamalja and the Blue Mages come from, as another place to explore. I think that's actually going to be our next exploration zone. That's where we're going to get our next Wellic weapons from.
The New World? I could believe that.
Yeah, I think we'll get them from the New World.
Exactly.
Way to the west of Eorzea.
Okay. Off map.
Yeah, it's off. Well, it's if you turn the map into a globe, there's a dark part where the New World would be. So that's what I think about that. Man, so it's gonna be good though. It's gonna be enjoyable. It's gonna be a ride. I'm looking forward to it. I'm definitely looking forward to getting into it. So with that, speaking of roleplay, we got a little bit of time here. I'm looking at you, potential listener, potential viewer, potential RPer, person with sprout on head for RP things. So you want to be a role player, right? I got you good stuff. Many times during the course of when I've run different roleplay things and done different roleplay things in Final Fantasy, I have often been asked, you know, how do I get into it? What's part, you know, what do I need? How is role playing in this different from role playing in other things? And so I have kind of a little short list for people who are interested in getting into roleplay in Final Fantasy. First, a disclaimer. I have not been an active part of the roleplay community in Final Fantasy XIV for more than a few years now. So, scale not to. But I think these are important ways of getting into any kind of roleplay, and roleplay in Final Fantasy in particular. Number one, it's got to be something that you actually are interested in. Roleplay is a hobby, but it is not a hobbyist's hobby. It's not something that you pick up because your friends think it's cool and you just kind of want to be part of the group. You got to have a mind and you got to have a heart for it. And the heart is the most important part. It sounds kind of cliche, but the heart is the most important part. You gotta have a passion for it. If you have a passion for it and you have a willingness to participate in, and I will say it for everyone in the back, collaborative storytelling. Collaborative. That is where you storytell with other people. You work alongside other people. You mesh with other people. Roleplay in Final Fantasy, roleplay in anything, is not a tool for your self-insert character. You can write for that. You can write your own goddamn book. You can write your own stories to entertain yourself and maybe others. Look. Drizzt Do'Urden is legitimately one of the most popular self-insert characters ever to be written. R.A. Salvatore is really good at writing action stories, and he's decent at writing characters. And so you have Drizzt Do'Urden. Drizzt is a decent character, but he's a self-insert. He is 100% a self-insert character, and it's okay. It's okay. You can take that shit and put it in a book and entertain yourselves and others for hours, but it is not effective for collaborative roleplay. And I want you to understand what a self-insert means. Self-insert does not mean that it's just that your character has power, has ability. Your self-insert Mary Sue, Bobby Joe, whatever you want to call it, has more power than everyone else and has power that you don't even know about, so that way it can be pulled out when needed to solve your story's questions. Not the questions, not the problems or concerns of the whole story, of the meta, of the collaborative story that you're telling. It is to solve your story, your problems. That is the crux of a self-insert character. Kirito from Sword Art Online is a self-insert character. Drizzt Do'Urden is a self-insert character to a lesser extent, but he still is. Goku. Goku is a fucking self-insert character. Okay? He legitimately is. In fact, you could probably put almost any shonen protag-kun, okay, And most of these light novel protagoons, irregular at Magic High School, anybody? You know?
Yeah.
So having a character that has power does not make your character a cheat character, a self-insert character. So having a passion is important. Having a character that you are willing to lose control of for the sake of telling a greater story with other people is also important. And having people who are playing with you that you trust, that trust you, and that everyone has a general vibe as far as their storytelling goes. When I was running a roleplay heavy, roleplay focused free company and Link Shell back in the day when we only had free companies and Link Shells and not fellowships and cross-world Link Shells and yada yada bullshit. In the days before Discord, when we spoke on forums and posted our stories using keyboards, there was one in particular, but there were a couple of people that wanted to be funny characters. Most of my group, the people that we were playing with, were semi-serious. More on the serious side than not. Funny characters do not fit well into serious or semi-serious stories. There's a hard line there. And if you want to play your pratfalling, gets excited over the smallest things, clumsy, Lalafell, or Miquote or whatever, Miquote, whatever. Find other people who vibe with that. Do not bring your funny character to a serious game. Do not bring your serious character to a funny game. Because both of them kill the enjoyment for everyone else.
And I think that even extends beyond just general RP, or at least RP within the game. I think that's any RP situation, even with Dungeons and Dragons and stuff too.
Yeah, most definitely. A lot of this stuff applies to just general RP. A lot of this stuff applies to, just generally how you should conduct yourself.
Any social interaction, because it's just like the same way with the raid group. You don't want to be the guy who's just kind of taking it half-assed in a group that's all serious people who want a hardcore raid and beat the whole tier in 1 week, and you're just kind of dicking around. Likewise, you don't want to be the hardcore guy in a group that's just kind of lollygagging and not moving at your pace either.
Yeah. It's not hard to get into. A lot of people think it is. And a lot of people are scared. Scared of opening up that side of themselves. Because look, when you're writing your own stories in your head, or you're sitting there playing the game and you're hearing the voice of your character, you're in control. You're in control of that narrative. You know what's going on. You know what's going to happen. You know who's doing what. But when you get into a situation where you are playing with other people who also have brains, ideas are going to differ, and sometimes you got to go with the flow, and sometimes you got to not. Sometimes you got to say no. But it's not hard to get into. You just need to find people who are willing to go through it with you and have a passion already for storytelling. If you try it and you find you don't like it, that's fine. But don't go into it with a, I don't, this isn't my thing, but I'm going to try it because my friends like it, or I'm going to try it because my significant other likes it. Stuff like that. Don't do that. You're disrespecting yourself, and you're disrespecting the other people that you're playing with, because you're not on the same level. You're not on the same level as the other people that you're going into it with, and you're wasting your time. You're wasting everybody else's time. So just be serious about what you're going to do, and that you're going to do it. That's all. That's very important. The last thing that I will mention before I close this special segment out, you don't have to have a novel for a backstory before you start role-playing. You need to only have 3 things: a character, a voice for that character, and a direction for that character. Where do you want the character to go? Do you want your character to become something, or is your character already something and you just want to keep them on that track? What's the concept? You don't need to have a 37-page backstory with illustrations and maps and chibi icons. You will eventually build that. You just need to get into it and tell the story first. Allow yourself to tell the story. Allow yourself to not know. Maybe you don't have your entire background worked out. Maybe you figure it out along the way. That's how most people actually do it. The preponderance of people that go into a game with a notebook in hand, with everything written about their character from birth to that very moment, majority of them are fucking self-inserts. They're bringing their preconceived concept that they know what it is, they know where the character is going to end, and they are just wanting other people to help tell their story. They're not trying to tell a story with everyone else. So you don't need a book. A few pages, a basic understanding of what your character is and where you want him to go, and then off to the races.